If you think today's job market is rough, imagine a system where your job interview was losing a war, and your contract was for life. Yeah, being a slave in ancient Rome was basically an unpaid internship that never ended, and with the added fun of your boss being able to sell you like an old iPhone whenever they wanted. Slavery wasn't just common in Rome, it was the backbone of the entire economy. Without slaves, the empire would have collapsed overnight. They were everywhere, working in farms, cleaning rich people's houses, managing bathhouses, entertaining Romans in brothels, and even whispering in the ears of politicians, influencing some of the biggest decisions in history. But not all slaves had the same fate. Some worked as house servants and could save up money to buy their freedom one day. Others were thrown into gladiator fights, where they had a shot at fame. Or, more likely, a brutal death for the entertainment of drunk Romans. And then there were the truly unlucky ones, the ones sent straight to mines and farms, where their life expectancy was shorter than a side character in Game of Thrones. Before we get into what daily life was actually like, let's answer the big question. How did someone end up as a slave in the first place? Spoiler alert. Nobody volunteered for this job. Hey Discovers, real quick before we dive back in, I've got a small favor to ask. If you love historical curiosities, epic battles, crazy mysteries, and mind-blowing stories that most people don't know about, then hit that subscribe button right now. That way, you won't miss any of our new videos and can keep uncovering insane facts every week. And of course, smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow and brings you even more awesome content. Alright, let's jump back into history. Life is unpredictable, but few twists are as brutal as waking up free and going to bed as someone's property. In ancient Rome, there were several ways to end up in chains, and none of them were exactly lucky breaks. First, prisoners of war. If you were a soldier fighting against Rome, bad news. If your side lost, you weren't going home. Instead, your new job could involve breaking rocks until you dropped dead or fighting a tiger for the entertainment of some wine-drunk Romans. War was Rome's biggest slave factory. Every time the Roman army won a battle, they captured thousands of prisoners and sold them at slave markets. Entire cities were wiped off the map, and the survivors were auctioned off like cattle. The strongest and most skilled captives had a better fate. They might become house servants or gladiators. The weak and unlucky? Straight to farms and mines, where their life expectancy was shorter than a TikTok trend. Second, got debt? Congrats, you're a slave now. If you've ever had to put lunch on a credit card, just be thankful you weren't born in ancient Rome, where falling into debt meant losing your freedom. If a Roman citizen racked up too much debt and couldn't pay it back, they could become their creditor's slave. The idea was simple: work off your debt. The problem? Most never got free. Why? Because slave owners would conveniently increase the debt, making it impossible to escape. Think of it like a predatory loan, except instead of losing your car, you lost your entire life. Oh, and if the debt was big enough, your family could be dragged into slavery with you. Talk about fine print. Third, born into slavery. Some people didn't even get a chance to mess up their life. They were just born into it. If your parents were slaves, so were you. Period. No options, no freedom, no loopholes. Some families spent generations serving the same household, basically like a cursed family heirloom that nobody could get rid of. And if a slave owner needed quick cash? No problem, they'd sell off a few children, breaking up families without a second thought. In ancient Rome, Black Friday existed, except instead of TVs on sale, it was actual people. Fourth, the slave market. Imagine a shopping mall, but instead of clothing stores, you had rows of people chained up, waiting to be sold. Roman slave markets were brutal business hubs. Traders sorted slaves by age, health, and skill set. Strong, young men. Expensive. Trained house servants. Even more valuable. Sick or injured slaves. Sold at a discount, because, hey, even slavery had a bargain bin. Slave owners could customize their purchases, training them for specific jobs. Basically like an RPG, but with actual human suffering. If you think your boss is demanding, just be grateful they can't legally whip you for bringing them the wrong coffee order. In ancient Rome, slavery wasn't just an unfortunate condition, it was a way of life, deeply embedded in every aspect of society. The Roman economy, politics, and daily life all depended on millions of enslaved people, who had no rights, no autonomy, and, in many cases, no hope of freedom. But slavery in Rome wasn't a one-size-fits-all experience. A slave's daily life depended entirely on what kind of slave they were, who owned them, and where they worked. Let's break it down. Fissert. House slaves. If a slave had any luck at all, they might end up as a household slave in a wealthy Roman's villa. Their daily tasks included cooking, cleaning, serving food, taking care of children, tutoring young Romans, and even entertaining guests. The perks. They had a roof over their heads, decent food, and, in rare cases, a small salary they could save to one day by their freedom, if they weren't sold first. But make no mistake, this wasn't some cushy butler job. A house slave's fate was still entirely in the hands of their master. If their owner woke up in a bad mood or thought the food was too cold, they could punish or even kill their slaves without consequences. For many, the walls of a Roman mansion weren't a sign of security. They were a gilded cage. Second, farm and mine slaves. If you weren't lucky enough to be a house slave, chances were you'd be breaking your back in a field or a mine. Farm slaves were the backbone of Rome's massive agricultural system. They worked from sunrise to sunset, endured constant whippings and abuse, and barely got enough food to survive. The work was relentless, and escape was nearly impossible. If they tried to run and got caught, the punishment was brutal: branding, mutilation, or even crucifixion as a warning to others. But as bad as farm slaves had it, mine slaves had it worse. The conditions in Roman mines were nothing short of a death sentence. The heat, the dust, the toxic fumes, it was all designed to squeeze every ounce of labor out of them before they dropped dead. Most mine slaves didn't live more than a few years. For these slaves, there was no hope, no future, no mercy. You worked until you collapsed, and then the Romans simply bought a new one. Third, gladiators. If you were strong, athletic, or just unlucky enough to be sold to a gladiator school, you might end up as a gladiator, a slave forced to fight for entertainment. Gladiators trained like elite athletes, with grueling physical regimens, strict diets, and constant combat drills. Unlike other slaves, they actually received better food and medical care. Why? Because they were investments. A gladiator was expensive to train, and their owner wanted them to last long enough to turn a profit. But don't get it twisted. Being a gladiator wasn't a path to glory for most. One bad fight, and it was game over. If the crowd wasn't entertained, the emperor could give the thumbs down, and just like that, you were done. For the rare few who became fan favorites, there was a chance at fame and freedom. But for most, the Colosseum was just another prison, with a sand-covered grave waiting beneath it. Roman slavery wasn't just brutal, it was the foundation of the empire. Whether they served in houses, toiled in fields, mined until they died, or fought in the arena, slaves were disposable, replaceable, and completely at the mercy of their owners. So, now I want to hear from you. Which part of Roman slavery shocked you the most? Could you have survived in that era? Let me know in the comments. And if you love uncovering the raw, untold truths of history, make sure to subscribe to the channel. We dive deep into the wildest, weirdest, and most jaw-dropping stories from the past. Because trust me, history is even crazier than you think. So, what did we learn today? Roman slavery was brutal, unforgiving, and the backbone of the empire. It didn't matter if you were a house servant, a farmhand, or a gladiator. You were still someone's property. Some slaves might have had slightly better living conditions than others, but in the end, they all shared the same fate. Zero freedom, no rights, and a life of servitude. The Roman Empire, often praised for its innovations and achievements, was built on the backs of millions of enslaved people. Every grand structure, every wealthy household, every gladiator fight in the Colosseum, it all relied on forced labor. Slaves were bought, sold, punished, and sometimes even killed for entertainment. Their suffering was woven into the fabric of Roman society, a reality often overlooked when we admire the greatness of the ancient world. So, now it's your turn to weigh in. Which part of Roman slavery shocked you the most? Could you have survived in that era? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you love exploring the raw, unfiltered truths of history, make sure to subscribe to the channel. we uncover the wildest, weirdest, and most jaw-dropping stories from the past. Because trust me, history is even crazier than you think. Hit that subscribe button and join the adventure.